Welcome back. Our next speaker is Jaehnig, and he's a historian and a writer. He currently writes for the Gazette, the Mining Gazette, Daily Mining Gazette here in Houghton. And if you just Google his name, you can see articles, mostly historic, on the copper miners and this area, historic. Just a multitude of very interesting articles. And he's going to talk about the juxtaposition between the ancient miners and the historic miners. It's Jaehnig.
We think of prehistory, of that which predates written records, at a time, those dark ages before records were kept. Yet while the people living 6,000 to 8,000 years ago recorded very little, they did leave records, and their records have been held safe by the ground on which they lived, worked, and died. So what archaeologists, historians, and anthropologists, and in some cases geologists do, is use the sites they created to gather data, analyze that data, piece together their story, and in this way bring the prehistoric periods into the historic record. They left a record of engineering prowess. When Samuel Knapp discovered the copper lode upon which the Ontonagon County's Minnesota mine was developed in 1849, he located at the bottom of one of the pits he had found a mass of pure copper. Taking measurements, Knapp recorded the mass was 10 feet long, 3 feet wide, and 2 feet thick. It was resting on oak timbers, although they were crudely cut, he recorded, and they were built in a cob-like bridge system that held the mass several feet off of the bottom of the pit, or above the vein. So they actually had the engineering capability of cutting these veins apart, elevating them, and lifting them up. They were geologists. While famous scientists like Dr. Douglas Houghton and Samuel T. Jackson debated the presence of pure copper anywhere on the earth, and debated whether it was in commercial quantities, these so-called prehistoric people knew where every workable mass of copper in the Lake Superior copper region was. In fact, every profitable mine in the region was discovered because of the open pit mines these people had opened. Houghton and Jackson needed only consult these people. The significance of those who mined the region thousands of years ago was completely neglected by 19th century academia. In fact, although to a somewhat lesser degree now, their significance is still largely overlooked today. If one stops to consider for just a moment, there were very few mines opened during the 19th century that were not opened upon ancient mining pits that these people had mined. How primitive were they? There are many diaries, letters, mining company reports, and other documentation that reveal the difficulty men encountered in trying to blaze roads from 19th century mines to the shores of Lake Superior so mineral could be moved out, supplies and equipment and foodstuffs could be brought in. In his geological survey, Houghton did not penetrate very far inland from the shores of the lake, yet the open pit mines that Knapp had discovered near the bank of the Ontonagon River were 12 miles inland from the mouth of the river. The Victoria mine was further inland still. The ancient miners would have had to have these roads, had to have roads of some type for the same basic reasons the 19th century miners needed them, the transportation of products and goods. Geologists like Houghton and Jackson missed a very valid and significant point when they dismissed the ancient open pit mines. So did everybody else. In 1844, Colonel Charles Gratiot followed the advice of geologist Jackson and opened a mine on the west bank of the Eagle River in Keweenaw County. Jackson's reports to the trustees to whom he was employed of the Lake Superior Mining Company glowed red with the praises of the copper lode he had directed Gratiot to open. The mine tottered on from 1844 to 1849 and never produced enough copper to pay for the wages of the men, let alone the development of the mine. A similar history occurred in the area around Copper Harbor. John Hayes, who was a druggist from Philadelphia, decided he was going to come to Copper Harbor, or to Keweenaw County, and speculate. And under the direction of a company hired geologist for the Pittsburgh and Boston Mining Company, they opened several shafts around the current location of Fort Wilkins. Copper was produced, or less copper, a little bit more copper was produced there than at Eagle River, but its sale did not come close to paying for the investment in the property. On the other hand, the Central Mining Company was discovered because of ancient open pit mines, and the Central paid its first dividend within the first year of its operation. The Minnesota mine was a similar case in point. Knapp did not just discover one abandoned open pit. He followed a series of them along the side of the ridge where the Minnesota mine was later located. That fissure vein had been discovered and worked centuries before he had found it. The Victorian mine and the Adventure mine are two more 19th century ventures opened on prehistoric open mining pits. Not every mine opened on an ancient site was financially successful in the 19th century. But that isn't to say that they weren't successful ventures in the times they were first opened. Did they lack the technology to mine deeper? Is it more probable they simply didn't need to mine deeper? Considering their economy, the population during that time, it brings up the question of market demand. That the copper mine was turned into tools, weapons, ornaments, and other goods is indisputable. We can see that with these displays over here. The existence of these artifacts attest to the native copper mined was a significant part of their economy. Were it not, they would not have mined it so extensively. It wouldn't have been worth the effort, and yet they mined extensively. And although they abandoned the region thousands of years ago, they served as guides to those who did not arrive until 1843, after the land had been ceded by the Ojibwe people at the Treaty of La Pointe. Men like Knapp, who discovered the Minnesota mine, and John Slauson, who discovered the Central mine on ancient open mining pits, listened to the guidance of these ancient miners and opened profitable mines. Others, like Samuel Jackson, paid no attention to the pits or their significance and led more than one company into bankruptcy. Were they advancing forward as the glaciers retreated? Several stages of the continental glacial affected the state, but the most important was the most recent, the Wisconsin stage, which retreated from Michigan about 9,500 years ago to 15,000 years ago. If these people were here some 8,000 years ago, they were probably following the retreating glaciers, which has been discussed in several topics earlier today, which means upper Michigan winters more than likely didn't drive them out for 6 months of the year like it does a lot of people today. They left more questions than answers, but they answered questions people demanded answers to in the 19th century. Was there copper in the Lake Superior region? Where was it? Could it be profitably mined? Could the harsh climate support civilization? They came, they remained, they left, they didn't come back. Why? Well, perhaps it'll never be known. We may never know these answers, but we do know this about them. They were here, and they were native to the continent, and they were the first people on Earth to work metal. From 1843, until approximately 1969, when the last mine closed, Michigan produced 64,630,188 pounds of copper in that time period, which, as far as native copper goes, was located nowhere else on the earth. And what this map is showing is over here, all of the lands that are owned by the Calumet and Hecla Mining Company and also by its subsidiaries. But what's really wonderful about this map is, in addition to all of that and the historical value, you can see how they're displaying the lodes and the mines in it, but it also gives you a good topography of where roads were, where copper sites were, where mine sites are. So not only is that a very great historical document, but it's also a good piece to see what it looked like here at the turn of the century. And these maps are on sale for $25 a piece, which is a pretty fair price.
They're not copies, they're original.
Yeah, these are the
1907
original
maps.
1907 maps. And again, this one was done, compiled and drawn by R.M. Edwards of Houghton, Michigan. R.M. Edwards was Richard Edwards, who was very old when he did these. He was the founder of the Montezuma Mining Company in Houghton, which is now where basically central Houghton is located. So that has some historic quality to it.
I very much enjoy your weekend articles on the copper country that you've been doing for almost a year now.
Yeah, a little over a year now.
How much longer will you be able to keep it up?
Chronologically getting into the middle of the strike of 1913, so probably another 6 months.
Okay.
But I'm sure we'll come up with another column before then. Thank you.
I've saved everyone you've got.
Well, thank you.
So you can put them in a collection of all your stories, or you can put them all together?
Yes,
You can link and go.
yeah, they're going to be compiled into a book. And right now I'm working on 2 other book projects. One is the history of the opening of the Keweenaw Copper District starting in 1843, using 3 mines in Fort Wilkins as examples of how the region was opened at a time when mining really was unfamiliar to the United States. This was brand new. And hard rock deep shaft mining was brand new. It was a novel experience. And the geologists, particularly Douglas and Jackson, had this theory that the copper would go down so far and it would become sulfurous or become something else, or it would become iron, because they had never seen anomalies like mass copper, and it didn't work out that way. So this book just kind of examines how these companies actually opened up and what subsequent companies throughout the United States and the world learned from what was done here in 1843. Thank you. The other one is basically an account of the mines of the Portage Lake mining district. There were 14 mines that opened in what's now the city of Houghton. And what happened to them, where did they merge, did they close, and what became of them? Most of them wound up being owned by the Isle Royal Mining Company, which became a subsidiary of Calumet and Hecla, and then was sold to the Copper Range Company and finally closed. It was one of the later mines to close, in fact. It closed in 1945, the same year that the Quincy Mining Company did.
Do you have a favorite? I mean, a favorite mine, a favorite, something that really grips you as far as up here?
No, I think what I like the most is the human aspect, the human interest of it. I mean, I can say that, say as an example, the Quincy Mine is 9,200 feet deep on the incline, or I can say that 255 men died opening that mine, and what became of their children and their widows, and where did they come from? How did they live while they were here? These are the things that's my passion, is the human aspect of it. Because without the people, the mine, they wouldn't have opened. Am I done?
Let me just ask you one last question.
Oh.
What's your experience about people here today's general level of understanding of the copper mining history in the region?
Without meaning to offend or insult anybody, they take it for granted. Most of them do.
No one ever taught us anything.
That's what I mean. It was
There's an industrial blight everywhere we went to, no jobs.
yeah,
And I mean through the 60s and early 70s.
yeah, but that was still it was too close.
Yeah.
You know, there were still so many people who were alive who'd worked in the mines and they'd been associated with the mines, or they hated the mines or what they stood for.
But
It-
geologists, nobody taught us what the whole copper range was and what was really happening here.
Yeah.
Geology-wise, and we have Michigan Tech City right there.
Right.
They sent a few professors our way and taught us in grade school and high school and get us out there into the woods and
Yeah.
teaching. I mean, what's going on that we don't even have that network system today?
Well, there are changes now. There are many programs that are coming out through Michigan Tech. Pardon me?
For children, for grade school?
Yes, and these are being taken into the classrooms, into the high schools through K-12. These are science programs that are being funded through the state, through the federal government. Joan Oplinger over at Copper Country Intermediate School District is one of the big movers behind this. And it's really exciting to see what these children are being taught now. Now, what's unfortunate is I'm on the committee for the Superior Signal, which is a quarterly newsletter put out by the Keweenaw County Historical Society. And in the past, they have done an annual history essay contest for Calumet Middle and High School, with the winner having their essay published in the Signal. In the past couple of years, they have had no applicants from the Calumet School District. They've said because of state mandated tests, they don't have the time to commit to the research, the composition, and the writing. So this year, the contest is going to be open to the whole four-county area. So a lot of what, the history isn't being taught yet, and which is unfortunate, because what happened here influenced all of America. It fueled the Industrial Revolution of the 19th century. It funded it. And there's an old saying that there are four incredible things in New England history as Lexington, Concord, Calumet, and Hecla. The first two made New England famous, and the second made New England rich. So
They became billionaires.
oh, yes. Yeah.
You
But-
have a couple other questions.
Oh, okay.
Scott and Vaughn will-
You mentioned that there was not a strong tradition of hard rock mining in Michigan or the United States.
Correct.
This began.
Mm-hmm.
Who were the miners? Did they learn by trial and error, or were there immigrants sort of seeking work who came from the tradition of mining?
There were immigrants who were seeking work. Hayes, when he opened up the Copper Harbor mines, brought German coal miners with him. And obviously, they weren't quite well adapted to that. What a lot of the companies sought were the Cornish and the Irish miners, because they had thousands of years of hard rock mining training. And of course, they trained Americans and other immigrants, the trade, and the skill began to be less important in the 1880s with the introduction of pneumatic drills and dynamite. You could drill holes faster, dynamite brought more rock down, you didn't have to be so precise in your techniques. So the importance, the primacy put on Cornish miners began to erode in the 1880s.
One more question for Vaughn.
You started out talking about the Minnesota mine?
Yes.
Is that one of them up in Fort Wilkins?
No, the Minnesota mine, excuse me, was in Ontonagon County. And it's on the Rockland Road. If you're familiar with where the Rockland Road is, there's just, all that's left there now is a concrete slab laying in a ditch and a sign that says the site of the Minnesota mine.
It was the first one?
It was the second. It was the second profitable mine. The first one was the cliff on the west branch of the Eagle River in what is now Keweenaw County. And that was opened by the Pittsburgh and Boston Mining Company. Yes, sir.
How did they transfer the tons of copper from the Minnesota mine out to Lake Superior? That's a long way.
Originally, they floated it on barges down the Ontonagon River, and it took something like 11 years. The Minnesota mine, the Mass mine, the Victoria, and there were a number of other mines, formed a company and built the Rockland Road from the Minnesota mine down to into the village of Ontonagon, and built docks there and warehouses so they could ship it out that way. But it was a toll road.
Second question, is that the mine where all the silver came from?
Which silver?
Silver inclusions? along with the copper?
That was common in all of in most of the mines in the copper country. The Quincy reported a lot of that. The Lake Superior mine and Eagle River reported a lot of it. The Minnesota did too. So it was common in the veins here, at least in the fissure veins. Yes, sir.
It's a little off topic, but the Minnesota mine had an air pressure system. Are you aware about how that worked? And
The Taylor air compressor? Yeah, actually, that compressor was, I haven't done any reading on it in years, but how it worked was Taylor got into the Ontonagon River and he dammed a portion of it off so he could work. And what he did was he dug basically a shaft. And when he opened it back up, the water flowed into that very fast, compressed the air underneath it and pushed it into tanks where they could use it. And it powered the air compressors for their drilling. It powered their hoisting equipment. Basically, it powered everything that they had. And it still had power left over. The thing was just a work of art.
I just wonder why it isn't done anymore.
I can't tell you. I'm just a historian. I could tell you what was done. But that's an interesting question. I'd like to know why that. Probably because it isn't profitable to somebody.
I know that the grade of their ore was not that great, but because they basically got their powder, or their power free, it was a profitable enterprise.
For them it was, but as somebody wasn't selling coal, and somebody just, there's always somebody further down the food chain with more political influence. As a Gazette writer, I'm doing a story right now on the Upper Peninsula Power Company saying we've reached our 10% limit of the power that we can buy from people generating solar electricity. So you can give it to us, but you're going to have to buy it back at retail prices. Well, this is a result of a law brought in by two downstate politicians who, well, their campaigns were financed by natural gas companies. And as the electric companies now are being fueled more by natural gas rather than coal. So I'm thinking, the Taylor air compressor and things like this are probably along that same line. So does history repeat itself? Probably. Okay, my time is up, and thank you very much. You want me to help you move this?